to do it. And if you look at SimCity, it actually has like firm roots in standard paint programs, right? Like the road tool and the rail tool are like the line drawing tools. The zoning tools are like the rectangle fill areas, and then the eraser is a lot like the bulldozer. And he was influenced a lot by the work of this economist at MIT named Jay Forrester, who did a lot of work on urban simulation, sort of these like statistical models of cities. And if we look at the experience of SimCity, it really breaks down into three categories. One is that SimCity is very much a creative program where you make things, right? It's like there's a paint program for painting cities, right? On the other hand, it's also this kind of like ant farm model railroad type experience where you sort of make something and you watch it come to life. Like it's half the fun of SimCity is just looking into your world and watching the people move, the cars move around and the buildings build up, all this stuff happening outside of your control. And then sort of the third aspect of SimCity's experience is sort of like puzzle-like aspect. We're trying to figure out what next to something else, right? So I want to put the residential near the industrial so people have jobs, but not too close because then this pollution will push the people away, right? And you notice I didn't say the word simulation. The simulation is actually what's making all this work. So the simulation is what drives the rules, the constraints that govern what can be placed next to what and what efficiency. The rules, the simulation is what makes the world come to life. It's what makes the cars drive around and people move in and move out. And the simulation is also what helps you make the city, right? You paint that area, you say, I want this to be housing, and the simulation puts the houses in. The simulation is like the beating heart that's animating all of these things. So let's look at SPORE. So SPORE, you have a creature editor where you make creatures, you can also make vehicles, you can also make buildings and planets. You can basically make all kinds of crazy stuff. And the design, designing the SPORE editors is very difficult. There's a lot of constraints, so it's kind of this mission impossible problem. And we look at, designers are, I think what design is looking at a system of very difficult constraints, overly constrained problems, and trying to sort of find the trade-offs amongst these different problems to find a solution. That's what designers do, whether it's architecture, game design, or anything else. So what are the constraints that were involved with SPORE's creature editor? Well, one is that we want anyone to be able to use them, right? So we didn't want people to have to be like trained 3D experts or computer game players. We want anyone to be able to use them. At the same time, we also want them to be in 3D, right? So this is a 3D program. And this is, of course, a fundamental design constraint that we want anyone to be able to use it. So on the other hand, we're also saying that it needs to be in 3D. 3D is not something that your grandmother, for example, would be very comfortable using. We also wanted to make sure the output from the editor was aesthetically satisfying, right? Which again is a challenge because most people don't know how to make design creatures or draw anything else for that matter. Also, we wanted people to be able to make anything they imagine. If I think that I can make some crazy elephant with 10 eyes, I should be able to do that. If people can imagine many things that they want to make and they can't make them, they'll feel very frustrated. We also wanted the editor to be fun to play with, which again is a conflict with the 3D-ness of it, because these 3D authoring programs are generally not considered fun. And we also had this crazy animation problem. There's an animation system in SPORE that animates the characters. Right? You can design any character you want. Normally in the game, the animations are often out front with the characters. But in this case, we don't know who the characters are going to be. So there's a very sophisticated animation technology we developed to animate whatever we wanted. And our editor had to play nice with the animation system. That was another constraint. Also, because SPORE is an online game, the assets are shared across the internet. Well, the assets also need to compress down to be very small, so they need to be highly compressible. And finally, the editor also has to time with the game. There's a whole creature game where you go and evolve and DNA points and buy the right parts and be able to kill your prey and run away from predators. And the editor has to be able to integrate with the gameplay as well. And of course, explain those rules to whomever's using it. And of course, there's also a trade-off between the gameplay constraints and aesthetic constraints. We don't want the only correct solution to playing the game to be making Tyrannosaurus Rex. We should be able to make a cute Care Bear or whatever it is you're making, and also be able to have that work in the game. So that was another constraint. So the other constraints are one is that the editor has many advanced features as well as many beginner features. So we wanted to make sure that people who knew the editor well were able to do many advanced things. So we couldn't have those advanced, sophisticated features get in the way, become stumbling blocks of our beginner players, right? So That was a challenge. And another challenge is the creature editor was the first editor that puts any player with a counter in the game. It was also the hardest design problem of any of the editors. And then finally, it was actually the first editor and was the only required editor in the whole game. So we were kind of saying, like, let's take our hardest problem, our hardest design problem, and put it right up front and make it, make everyone have to use this thing, right? It was really, the demand was high. And it's like a really, hard problem. It was hard work to do this. So one of the key features that we use to one of the key conceptual features we use to solve these kind of problems, magic crayon design problems, is this idea of possibility spaces. So this is a development screenshot of the Sporepedia. How many people have played Spore? Anyone actually played it? Oh, okay, cool. So you know that there's if you go on, everything you make in the game is published on the internet, right? So when you go online, there's a Sporepedia, you can browse all of the content made by other players. And right now, there's about 50 million assets on the internet, like 50 million creatures, buildings, vehicles that people have made, which blows my mind. So this is an early screenshot of the Sporepedia, and this is a page of content that people on our team are making, right? As you make things in the game, it would go to the top of the list, and other people on the team could see it. It was like a prototype for the content sharing system. And this content on this page, these are vehicles. This represents a sample of the possibility space of all the things you can make in Spore. So if you think of all the things you can make in Spore as a space, as a giant n-dimensional space, the things on that web page are like samples, right? They're like sample points inside of that space. And they also represent the things that are probable that you'll end up in Spore, right? You can make a lot of things in Spore, and because of the design of the editor, some of the things are more probable, more likely, easier to make than others. And what that web page represents is the more probable content. And then you also think about the desirable content, like content we want players to make. This is content that looks good, that aesthetically satisfying, that satisfies the gameplay requirements. And only some of what we're actually seeing in the probable set is actually desirable. Some of it is not. And when you think about it, the stuff that's both desirable and probable is very good. Right? That means that we've done our job correctly, and that people are making the stuff we want them to make. On the other hand, there's the stuff that people are very likely to make that isn't good, and that's bad. That's a design challenge for us to overcome. And then there's the stuff that you can make. It's possible to make a bunch of stuff that's not desirable, and that we want to shrink, but that's not a critical problem, right? Unlike the bad stuff. And then, of course, there's the stuff it's possible to make, but not likely. This is something an advanced player would make that's good, right? So this is like someone who's really an expert at our system. They can get to this stuff over in the OK section, but we don't need to worry about that. That's totally cool. And then there's the things people wish that they can make, right? But they can't make, and that's bad. There's a lot of things our players, when they play the game, think, I wish I could make this, that, and that, and that, and they can't do it, and we've messed up. So we also need to minimize that area. So the design problem, in a sense, becomes shifting around these possibilities, like shifting the stuff out of the bad into the good and the shrink into the good. So this is a very helpful design tool to look at the content people are making because it represents what people are it represents a probable space and lets us know how we're doing our job. And when we look at the bad content out here, we can look at the structural features, the patterns that emerge of bad stuff and good stuff and try to reincorporate that back into the game's sort of encouragement in the UI. So what we're trying to do is sort of shrink this possible probable space and put it over in the desirable so that we want as much stuff that you can make with the game and you will let them make in the game to be good. So this is John. He's one of the animators and artists on Spore, and he is really, really good at making creatures. Like he can make, no matter, like even if the tool is awful, even if he's using Maya, right, which is a great tool for artists, but an awful tool for consumers, so even if he can make amazing stuff. And what he has in his head is like some kind of like crazy, like he just knows things. There's stuff in there I don't understand that lets him make really, really good creatures. And I wish I could do that. So, and when we think about what's in his head, what he actually can do in his head, like a computer